Thank you. All right. I'm trying to make it so I can see everybody and see the presentation at the same time. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jules Troa, and I'm a manager and diversity manager in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And today we're going to talk about implementing restorative justice as a community building practice. So we'll talk about restorative justice as a whole, and then we'll sort of narrow it down to the community building aspect, which is the part that I lead. So let's see, how many people have we gotten signed up yet? So, 23, okay. All right, so we'll go ahead. So just a little bit about the history of restorative justice. Restorative justice started out in indigenous communities as a way of discussing problems, coming to resolution. There are also healing circles and things like that. But by the 70s, they had incorporated a part of these community circles as a part of what we're now calling restorative justice. And in the 70s, it was used as a way, as an alternate to retributive justice, for lack of a better way to put it. In about 2006, the Oakland Unified School District adopted this restorative justice program in order to reduce the number of expulsions and problems at the school, and it was very, very successful. And then in 2018, the AANC endorsed it to address mistreatment of learners. And by all accounts, it's been very successful. In fact, in the Journal of Academic Medicine, David Acosta and David Karp wrote a treatise basically for how to address mistreatment in academic medicine. And our students report mistreatment, and it has continued. And so one of the ways that we're trying to address this is by implementing restorative justice throughout our campus, but especially also for our students. So we define, or the University of San Diego defines restorative justice as a way to prevent harm in a community with an emphasis on healing, social support, active accountability. It includes a variety of practices that are rooted in indigenous and religious traditions. Some practices help prevent harm by building relationships and strengthening communities. Others respond to harm by clearly identifying the harms, needs, and solutions through an inclusive, collaborative process. Most people are familiar with that because that is the part that is the tier 2. But we like to think of restorative justice as a way to build relationships. So at its core, restorative justice is about relationships, how you treat them, maintain them, and mend them. It's based on a philosophy that we're all interconnected, and a harm to one is a harm to all. This is a really nice definition from Impact Justice. Restorative justice is really about an ethical framework and not really a program model, but we focus on positive, just, and equitable relationships. And the positive relationships are based on empathy and care. Our equitable relationships, we say, are based on mutual recognition, dignity, and respect. And just relationships are based on accountability and obligations. So we think of restorative justice as a way to build community of accountability as well as community familiarity. But basically, for community accountability, it's there because we have a shared commitment to creating a community, a shared responsibility to taking action, a commitment to change, willingness to hear feedback. And then we share responsibility for harm. So no matter who does the harm, when there is harm in the community, it affects us all. So our restorative justice approach has 3 tiers. The first tier, which is the one that I'm responsible for, is building relationships through community building circles. And we'll talk more about how to implement restorative justice really in just about every meeting that you go to. Tier 2 is to respond to specific conflicts, specific harm. And then tier 3 is about re-entry for the person or persons that have been excluded from the community due to conflict or harm. We are in the process of hiring someone for tier 2 and 3, but we wanted to roll out tier 1 ahead of that because tier 1 is really the foundation that the other tiers are built on. So tier 1, you want to think of it as community building, a way to reaffirm our values, getting to know each other, reflecting on any kind of social crisis, creating a foundation for having more difficult conversations. And that last part is really, really important. When we've rolled this out to students, they've given us feedback that, wow, they wish they would have had this from the very, very beginning of their time here at UMass. And so we actually have put a piece of restorative justice into the orientation and for our students. And we hope that will continue and that will help reduce harm. Tier 2 is really about responding to specific harm or conflict, repairing relationships, responding to climate surveys, and addressing community harms in general. So today we'll focus on community building circles. So our community building circles are centered on storytelling. They're about shared experiences and perspectives. They tap into our communal nature. If we think of things in a circle, although we can do this virtually, we think of things in a circle as a way to take away some of the hierarchy that exists in a team or in a department or in a school. So it's a way to bring down the hierarchy, but also to build empathy and accountability between individuals and the community as a whole. So for tier 1, we like to ask these kinds of questions, and we'll get into the details in just a moment. But tier 1 is really about thinking about, who are we? What are our stories? What are our core values? What's important to us? What kind of community do we want to be a part of? And how do we want to treat each other? How will we all contribute? Those kinds of things. So a typical tier 1 agenda would have something like this, where you have a talking piece. The talking piece is really about sharing something that's important to you so that other people can understand you a little bit better. This is a way to build empathy and learn more about each other. So in that talking piece conversation, we talk about hearing from others, what resonated with you, Was there a personal connection? And very, very often there is. It's really an amazing part of the process. And then we have our community agreements. And those community agreements are there because in a challenging discussion, you want to figure out what is it that you need most for participation, what would help you in a good way, and what can you offer to make this the discussion a successful one. And then the actual circle itself will ask things like, what makes you feel proud and connected to the school? What is something that is makes it difficult for you to feel connected to the school? What steps would you like to see improve? What steps would you like to see to address your concerns? In a dissertation by Pedro Flores, these are some of the evaluation results, and as we've evaluated some of the circles that we've done, we found very similar, really positive results where people want to be in circle. They found the community building circle as a positive. They felt safe. They felt more connected to the community. And then, a large percentage said that they would love to participate in the future. So we also like to talk about, in addition to the circles, a restorative mindset in workspaces. And so what we do with that is, for smaller meetings, you ask people to share something that's given you hope right now, something that made you laugh recently, something that brought you joy, or give a weather report. This is one of my favorites. Give a weather report that reflects your mood today. So what the other thing is, like, what might you need to put aside to help you be present today? What's been on your mind? But really, you want to move from a transactional relationship to a relational relationship. Back in January, really in the first part of February, we had people from University of San Diego come here and train us on restorative justice. And these are the restorative justice facilitators. And as we get requests and as we build community building circles, these folks are the folks that we will rely on because they've been trained. It was like a 3-day training. It was very intense, and that just moved right along. So there are a bunch of folks from across our institution that have been trained. Today, what I'd like to do is introduce Celestine Warren, who's a PGY2 in the orthopedic surgery residency, and have her talk about her experience in implementing restorative justice. And then we'll hear from Monique Powell, who's the pediatric residency program coordinator, and then Jorge Sanchez to talk about what it's like to implement for our business community. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can hear from Celestine. We'll call on you first, and have you tell us a little bit about your experience implementing restorative justice.
Thanks, Jules, and great overview there. Nice to see everybody here. So a little bit of background. I'm a second-year orthopedic surgery resident at UMass. I just came off my research year in which I spent a lot of time working with Jules and Lynn and Marlena and others in the diversity office, and was fortunate enough to participate in the training in February. And it really did change my mindset for how I approach clinical work. And I wanted to share a little bit about a project that I've been doing to create spaces for some of these conversations. In my department, there's not a lot of built-in space to discuss how are we doing as a community, how are we doing as a series of individuals. There's so much effort on completing clinical care tasks that we oftentimes don't really relate with each other and really say, how is it going underneath all of this? Great job with that pediatric reduction and putting their arm in a cast, but how are you doing? How did that feel? So I ended up conducting a series of focus groups as part of a qualitative research study to assess resident belonging and inclusivity in our program. And so we dedicated space and time and came up with some questions. And this was a poster, I think, this morning at the poster session. So you may have already seen that. But the goal was to think about, how do we see whether people are thriving? How do we see how the residents are doing? How do we see if people feel like they belong? And for us, we found having a dedicated space and a very structured framework for having those conversations, I think, allowed people to feel comfortable sharing a little bit. So we did a series of 6 focus groups. Most of them were in the evening as groups. Some of them were individually, one-on-one, and asked questions such as, what makes you feel like you're thriving here, and what's getting in the way of that? And where do you most like to connect with people? Is that in the hospital or at home or at a restaurant? And just trying to tease out some of these things, because I realized that these earnest conversations, you can know people for years and years and spend 100 hours a week with them in the hospital, and yet you don't really know how are people doing and what are people's experiences beyond just completing work as part of a team. So thus far, that's been my lived experience with restorative justice, and it's taken me a while to put that language to that project and realize, oh, this is something that we've been doing that feels really good. And people would give feedback saying, wow, I haven't really reflected on my work in years. Thank you for offering the space. And so I think for me, in moving forward, it's been about trying to bring these restorative opportunities and really just calling out, we're going to create an hour and we're going to do this all together, rather than what I had initially thought would be more sort of pop up, a conversation here, a conversation here. I think there's space for that, but at least in my department, what's really succeeded is saying, we're going to dedicate time.
Okay. Thank you. So now we'll hear from Monique Powell, who is from the Pediatrics Residency Program. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Wonderful. Thank you, Jules. And thank you guys for joining us. I'm really excited to share some of the work that we've done in pediatrics with everyone. I had the pleasure of joining the session in February, and I agree with Celestine when she said that it completely changed the way we viewed our day-to-day. After attending that session, I quickly realized that this could work wonders in our training programs. I oversee 5 pediatric training programs. I'm the program administrator for all the pediatric training programs. So I just quickly thought about how we can use some of the items and the tips and tricks that we were taught, and just build community amongst all of our trainees. So my mind started kind of rolling, and Nisha Fahey, who's a faculty member here in PEDS, worked together. She also did the training with us, and unfortunately she couldn't join us today. But we started thinking about how we can incorporate some of these principles into our orientation sessions with our new incoming residents when they join us early in July, so we can get some of this tier 1 floor work done and create some of these community building sessions. So we were able to incorporate it into our orientation schedule. And, we set aside an hour to just work on this. And we pretty much started by welcoming everyone. We talked a little bit about what restorative justice is. We realized a lot of our trainees either weren't familiar with it or just associated it with the legal system. So it was nice to give them just some behind the scenes of how we would be using it in our medical educational institute. And then we talked a little bit about the agreements. We did a check-in prompt. I kind of took the weather prompt that we really like. So we took that prompt and we used that prompt. And we used some guiding questions that were very specific to our training program. So some of our questions were, what are you apprehensive about as you start residency? And what do you need to feel seen or supported in this community? And lastly, our final questions was, what gifts or commitments will you bring and offer to this community? And we allowed everyone to just be vulnerable and share some of these items and some of their thoughts. Now, one thing we did emphasize is that we would like to take the learning, but leave the stories, which is another line that I picked from the teaching that I received. So it allowed them to just be vulnerable and share their experiences and what they had to offer. And we found some really cool things. Like one trainee said, "Oh, I'm willing to offer. I love to bake, so I'll bring baked goods, and that's how I'm offering support to this community." And it was just wonderful to see them interact and build those bonds right from the first week. Now, in terms of next steps, because obviously once you do one community building circle, it's instantly what's next? Where do we go from here?
Okay.
What we've opted to do is we will be working on some quarterly restorative justice, just building community circles. And in addition to that, Med Peds is very close to pediatrics. So next year we do plan to make it a point to include Med Peds in our orientation session. This year was a little difficult because by the time we got around to scheduling the initial one, we realized it just wasn't going to work well with their schedule. But overall, we've received positive feedback. The trainees are excited about doing it again. We've seen them just interact with each other a lot. They're very close. I think also in this hybrid world, it's nice to do anything that fosters community. So we're very excited to see where this takes us.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I wanted to for us to hear from Jorge Sanchez, who is who works in the diversity office, but is a program director for diversity and inclusion for Health Consulting. And well, I'll let Jorge give his story about his experience with restorative justice.
Yeah. Thanks, Jules, and thanks, Monique, actually teeing this up really nicely. Folks have heard probably during the plenary session a little bit about what I'm going to speak to in terms of the restorative justice piece. But, for many of you who don't know, is that, For Health Consulting is made up of about 1,100 employees. And currently our business model is primarily remote. So to your point, Monique, this really was, as we began the training, it was really critical for us, when we thought about, how are we putting our strategic plan together for the next year? How do we get this work out in front of our leadership and our community to see how we can integrate it into our plan? So, soon after our training, we sort of jumped on it and got out in front of our executive leadership team as well as our operational leadership team, where we, really provided some context and overview, and really, to Jules's point, really sort of establishing a foundational understanding about, what it is, what it isn't, as you folks had mentioned, that the default is sort of to harm the criminal justice system, but how is this really applicable to us? And how might this inform our priorities in terms of our strategic plan? So, we were able to do that presentation. Jules and Lynn were present. We actually did a pilot of a reflecting and connection circle with our cultural diversity committee. And after sort of the presentation, it was time for us to really sort of lay out what our strategy might be in terms of building community. And, we established our own diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging pillar. And within that and underneath that work, one of our focuses is on building and empowering community and culture. And that is sort of our work stream. It's aligned with our climate and culture strategic priority under Impact 2025. And we now have some goals for this year. We recognize that to be successful, we need to get this work out in front of 1,100 people, that this wasn't the work of one department or two departments, that we really wanted to establish a baseline understanding across our community. So, part of our work moving forward is now taking a look at presentations at the departmental level, piloting circles across our departments, and then this year really scaling up at the end of the year to expand across all of our departments. So this is now, really embedded in the fabric of our planning. We've got benchmarks and measurements now to really take a look at how many sessions will we be doing, what we'll be piloting, following up with evaluations, and really informing what a larger scale rollout might look like. We've got lots of anticipated folks who are eager, like you said. They hear about One Circle and everyone wants to be on board. So I think the critical piece for us too is really think about leveraging our community of practice. So, there are 30 of us. It's a real opportunity to tap into the support of those other facilitators to really help inform and roll this out, and to scale it out, given the size of our community. So I'll definitely be tapping my colleagues who have been trained and looking for other opportunities to practice and get this work out in front of folks. But I think for us too, being intentional about not rolling everything out, we need to get sort of this foundational understanding about what our focus is this year, which is really about the community building piece, and finding spaces and ways that we can reconnect in different ways. In particular, again, given our remote state, how do we think innovatively about creating those spaces online? And when we have the chance, what does that look like in person? So certainly lots of thinking as we're rolling this out, and asking the community what's working for you, and what are the different ways that we might be able to help you connect with your teams, your managers, and otherwise.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the differences between these stories, and the differences in the different departments, and how they're rolling it out is slightly different. But it's important to hear the different perspectives, because there's no sort of one right way. But if you use restorative justice as a way to build community, then the rest can sort of grow from that. And you can use it in your D. I'm going to go ahead and share back this screen so we can see this poem by Beth Strano. And basically, she's saying there is no such thing as a quote unquote safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry our scars with us. But this space seeks to turn down the volume of the outside world, amplify voices that have to fight normally to be heard elsewhere. The space will never be perfect, but it won't always be what we wish it would be. But our space will be together, and we'll work on it side by side. So as we go into, I'm going to ask everybody to join a breakout session. Before we do that, what we want to do is discuss our communication agreements, that will practice active listening, that will allow for silence to have a place. We'll speak our truth. We'll keep this a confidential space. We won't look to others to speak on behalf of their race or identity. We'll share airtime. We want everybody to feel comfortable participating, and think about the ways of participation. But you want to assume best intentions and acknowledge your own impact. So what we're going to do is break out into, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 5 groups. We'll have about 5 minutes, so it's going to be really, really quick. But we want you to think about what makes you feel connected to the UMass community. And as we break you into the groups, just share with each other, and then we'll bring everybody back together, and then we can share sort of what that was like. What were some of the surprises? What were some of the things that you sort of felt like you already knew. Um, but you'll get an idea of how this community building actually works. So I am going to stop share. I think I have to stop share it to, where is our breakout? Here it is. And then I'm going to create 6 breakout. All right. So remember, what makes you feel connected to the UMass community is the prompt. And so when I break you out into the rooms, you want to share that with each other, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes. All right. Okay. So we'll open all rooms. That. So we'll time it about 5 minutes. What's that?
I'm staying out of the breakout room. I'm
Okay.
staying in my own breakout office.
There
Okay.
you go. You can share with me. This can be our own breakout room.
There you
What
go.
makes you feel
Actually,
connected to the UMass community?
and a sense of belonging. Actually, this is the first time that I'm hearing about restorative justice.
Hmm.
Because when they had the training back in January, I was actually on vacation.
Oh, okay.
And so I wasn't trained. And then I've heard bits and pieces, but never really attended. So this was actually a great overview. And even to hear the testimonials from other people as to how they've implemented it. Like I've known Monique. I worked with her for 1.5 years.
Mhm.
Back in the days, I could think of quite a few crazy things back in the day. Let's try not to laugh, but she's great. And and how they implement it and how they create a sense of community, especially in residency, because they're so busy, they're always together, but they're so focused on the patient that they never talk about themselves or how they feel or reflecting. So that was really good to hear.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think the mission is really important for me. I actually years ago worked for a publishing company, and basically everything was about the bottom line, the dollar. There was no talk about what the magazines meant or anything like that. So for me, being connected to the medical school and the GSBS School of Medicine, as well as GSN, um, really connecting to the fact that we're a public medical school, that our mission really is to improve improve our communities' health and well-being, and it's really cool to me that I get to help by doing training sessions and that sort of thing for all 3 schools, and so that, like, years down the line, maybe there's going to be a doctor or a
No,
a
it's
scientist or
very rewarding, I'm sure. as, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this morning, during our session, I think someone talked about, I think it was during the DES, that was said, um, I think some of the residents talked about the deep distrust and the processes when they needed to talk and convey some issues, and in the GME processes. And that was a little bit, that was disheartening that, because it, you know, we think it's sometimes I think of it as a cliche, and I don't even open my mouth because I think it's not worth it because it's such a cliche. But at the end, it really is about a sense of belonging, feeling accepted for your differences. And in the session before, when Marlena chimed in about, you don't need data, but then again, I don't think I have the confidence to say it. I know I don't, but I was about to say, you don't need data. Look at your department, look at your staff, look who you work with. That's all you really need to do for starters is look at the people around you, because a lot of times we seem to look, generally speaking, but we forget to look in our own house. With our own families, with our own people.
Yeah. So Jorge, we were just because we didn't go into any of the rooms, we were just doing our own little breakout session here. I'm going to broadcast to everybody that they have 1 minute.
Yeah,
But
sorry,
Jorge,
I needed to go to the restroom. Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
I was telling Jules that in February, January, February, when the big training was happening, I was in Cancun, so I never really took the training, and so this was a really good overview of how it came to be, why and then to hear the testimonials from others and how they're using it,
Yeah.
to be a community. That was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people are eager, to have this
And
come
it's
their
very
way.
well
So
received, it seems.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
our job is now make it smooth and have the
Right,
capacity to
right.
respond, right?
That's it. That is it.
Yeah.
So we've given people about 6 minutes, which is good. I told everybody just a second ago that I'd give them 1 more minute, so we'll give 1 more minute. It looks like a bunch of people are talking. I can see like where people are on mute and not, and it looks like a bunch
I
of
can
people
see
are
the
talking.
little microphones going up, so let them
Yeah, it's
talk.
really cool. I think that's really, really cool. Melissa, we were doing a pretend breakout. So none of us actually went into a breakout room. So we were like just doing a little pretend breakout. So thinking about what makes us all feel connected to the UMass Chan community. All right, so
I'd
I'm
hate
going
to
to
be in
close the
room
rooms
4.
because it's been about 7. What's that?
I said, I'm not sure I'd like to be in, well, Marlene is there in room 4.
Okay, so I'm going to close the room, and that gives folks time to come back.
We love them. We do. I do, honestly.
Melissa, we're hoping to engage you in some of our work at For Health. So
Oh, I would love that.
I would love that for you to support, what our plans. So
Oh, absolutely. Anything I can do keeps me job security.
lots of work to be done.
Yes.
Lots and lots of it. All right, so we're giving folks time to come back to the room. All the breakout rooms should be closing very, very soon. Three, two, one. Okay. Close this. All right. It looks like most everybody's back. Oh, looks like we didn't even lose anybody. That's good. So I'm wondering, what was it like for you? What was that experience like? Did everyone get a chance to speak? And then what was it like to hear what it feels like to feel connected to our community here at UMass Chan? So feel free to unmute or type in the chat, and I'll read out what folks are typing. So does anybody want to talk about their experiences?
Sure, I
Their
can.
experience? Yes, please.
The group I was with, there were 3 of us that worked together and we kind of already knew each other, but we got to meet 2 more people, which was great. And we talked about how the mix between some people preferring and having jobs that are remote and some people liking to work in person seemed like something that we all talked about. And even those of us who are remote, we have people, we have someone from California in our group, and she was talking about the ways that she still feels very much connected. And our process improvement and project management team, I think, does a pretty good job at making sure even the people that are remote have ways to engage virtually and learn about each other.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Other folks, that's a really nice example, especially when you have so many folks that are remote. That's really powerful. Other folks want to share?
I'll
You feel
go.
like you, oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I'll
Thank you.
go. And to kind of piggyback what Laura said, because I am in the PIPM team, and I am remote, and so our discussion kind of centered around how we stay connected in a remote environment. I think sometimes it's taken for granted because prior to coming to For Health Consulting, I had the opportunity to work remote, but I was local, so I could go in the office, whenever I wanted to or needed to. But being completely remote, where I can't drive to you every day, it requires deliberation with regard to staying connected. And so in PIPM, we do make huge efforts to do that. So I try to volunteer on the same days that I know that something is going on in Massachusetts where there's volunteer opportunity, so that I'm giving back in my community while you're giving back in your community, and I'm feeling more connected to what's happening in Massachusetts. So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So Amanda was saying that the PIMP group is in 14 different states. That's amazing. And they're very grateful for Laura to help folks stay connected to our institution. Does anybody else have any experience? Did anybody else have any experiences that they wanted to share?
Hi, this is Candace. Just that it was nice to, I met 2 people that I haven't worked with or seen in meetings. And that was nice to know that we talked about how we felt like feeling a part of something larger than ourselves, work that's beneficial to a large community. Very important work that we're engaged in, also helps us feel very connected to UMass Chan. I know for me personally, feeling and being able to speak with people that I know are very genuine in their intention to do great work and to be a part of a solution and not just to be part of a solution with genuine intention behind it. I feel very, I begin to really feel connected to those efforts. And then also hearing about some of our colleagues that have been feeling isolated, even with like during the pandemic, and us just recently kind of coming back to work and being able to meet people again, and just some of those feelings, and how this type of workshop and conversation could be helpful for new employees to feel connected, to let them know that you are not alone. You do have people here, and to be able to speak with them can help with some of that isolation. So yeah, that's what we talked about.
That's wonderful. Anyone else have any other? It's when you were speaking, we had a little breakout room that we did, and it's interesting to me because like one of the things that makes me feel connected to the institution is the mission, and that sounds silly, but as the state's only public medical school, it's a really powerful thing to me to be able to work here, to be able to interact with folks like the people on this call, to be able to interact with learners of all levels. It's really, really special, and I hope that that I'm having an impact here, as well as me benefiting. You know what I mean? I hope that there's an exchange of benefit. Anyone else want to share? All right, so I'll keep the chat open and running, and if you want to speak, just come off your mute and say something. But the idea here was to let you experience very, very quickly, I mean, obviously, very, very quickly, one of the questions that we use for our connecting and reflecting or community building circles. This is a way that you can, this particular question sort of can help you reflect on your values, the values of the institution, and how we're interwoven. So that is what we have for today. You can actually email me personally or Lynn Hernandez, or you can let's see, let me get out of this. I'll put this in here. Or you can email Restorative Justice at umassmed.edu. So that will go to email for our office, and several of us have access to that. So somebody will respond to you. But we're here to help. So very soon we're going to start doing a tri-school community building circle, and so we're slowly rolling this out to all the departments and all the business units, so that we create this fabric that is our community, so that if something bad should happen, we'll be able to respond, and you'll feel connected already to our institution, and hopefully will allow for that situation to get resolved as quickly as possible. I don't know, Lynn, if you wanted to add anything to what we're talking about, you know, our office is available to each and every one of you to help guide you, connect you with the community of practice, so that if you have community circles that you want to run, and you need a co-facilitator or something like that, we have about 30 something people that were trained, and so we're going to be able to find somebody to help. You know what I mean? All right. Well, do we have any other questions, any other comments? Do you think you'll be able to use this wherever you're working? Yeah. Okay. Well, excellent. All right. Well, I'll stay on the line. Oh, hello.
Sorry, we're
Did you
both
get-
having computer issues. Yeah.
So I just came to the
Mine
audience.
is
I
mine too.
apologize.
Mine keeps freezing. Mine keeps
Yeah,
freezing.
and mine just completely froze. So
Yeah, mine kept
I
freezing too,
apologize.
so I apologize
Yeah.
too.
That's okay. That's okay. We're in the office, I promise. Um, but having connectivity issues, it's very interesting. But did you guys have anything you want to add to the conversation, Lynn or Marlena?
Looks like you have a question. Are there any plans for RG facilitating training more staff leader groups? I think we're starting to see a need for that. So I think we're definitely going to start moving into the direction of looking at exploring options for training individuals. So we will definitely keep you posted. If you are interested in receiving training in the future, please let us know so that we can put you on the list. But I think there's actually multiple different avenues that we can explore to get more training done. And so if you're interested in that, please let us know. It is a 2.5-day training and facilitator training.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Michael, I'm curious if you're volunteering or you're just asking a question.
Curious about training, I think more. Yeah. Curious.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, then I'll give you back 4 minutes of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good to
And we'll
see
be sending
everybody.
an evaluation out too.